workshop series. This is workshop 1, an introduction. My name is Kimberly Reddens, Principal Planner at the City of Ontario, leading the Ontario Plan Update effort under the direction of our Planning Director, Rudy Zeladon. Tonight, our team, which includes both city staff and our consultant Placeworks, led by Brian Judd, Principal in Charge, and Colin Drucker, Project Manager, are holding this workshop to provide an overview of the TOP 2050 project and receive your input, comments, and questions. The Ontario Plan, our policy plan, which is our general plan as well, was adopted in 2010 by the City Council. And this update is a technical update to check in on our progress towards the vision of complete community and respond to the economic and legislative changes that have occurred over the last 10 years. We'll provide a 45-minute overview of the Ontario components, review the current issues facing the city, and land use considerations. This will be followed by an opportunity for you to share your thoughts and comments. So with that said, once again, I'd like to thank you for being here this evening, and I'd like to introduce Colin Drucker of Placeworks to present the 2050 update project.
Thank you, Kim. I'm going to turn on my screen temporarily just so you can all see that there is a face. We're still virtual in the world right now. But then I'm going to turn it off because sometimes it blocks people's screens, and it's more important that you see the content than you see my face. All right. So I wanted to reiterate that tonight's meeting is being recorded. We're doing that for a couple of reasons, one of which is for any of those folks who cannot attend tonight. And we did not anticipate a huge crowd. What we instead designed this presentation to be is a recorded presentation that can be made available on the website, shared, and we will be translating this presentation into Spanish, both the slides and the narrative right now, and then we're going to share that on the city's website. You can see ontarioplan.org. There is a link, and we'll show throughout the presentation some of the snapshots of the website. You click on TOP 2050 update, and you will find this content and other information. If you do want to speak with someone in advance, there's translation services being offered through a city staff person named Robert Morales, and he can be contacted with the phone number and email contact you see below. This is a virtual meeting, and so again, it is being recorded. If you do get into a position where you can unmute your mic or show your webcam, please be aware that those might be turned on. We want to avoid disruptions and anything that you don't intend to share. If you have any technical issues, please use the chat feature and one of our team members will assist you. If you have questions or comments during the meeting, we ask that you hold them until the Q&A session. We want to get through about a 40-minute presentation that goes over everything, and then we will call people by name. If you are on there by phone, we ask that you hit *9, and it will ask you to raise your hand, and then we will call on you and you can unmute yourself. If you submit a question in the chat, we're going to ask you to answer or ask that question during the Q&A session again. So if you have any issues during the meeting, please use the chat to tell us about it. If you have issues about the project, suggestions, or concerns, please email Kim at the email contact you see below, and she or another city staff member will get in contact with you shortly. So first, I'm going to go over just a little bit more about what Kim was saying about the Ontario Plan. The Ontario Plan is an overall framework for governance and decision-making for the City of Ontario. It includes a number of components, and you can see in the image to the right there is a governance component, a policy plan component, and that's what people think of as the general plan, the legal long-term planning document for the city. And then there are other components that include the city council goals, implementation plan, and then there's going to be a tracking and feedback system that is fleshed out during this process. As Kim mentioned, This is a technical update. The vision is maintained and is not changing. And instead, we are updating based on topical changes in state laws and mandates, other changes in the economics of the world, and technological advances, such as the advancements in sharing data and understanding trends. So this is about a 1.5-year process. We've been doing some due diligence, getting understandings of existing conditions, understanding where and how the city is going to respond to the housing mandates that it's facing, and extending the outreach that has been ongoing over the last few years. We're then going to proceed to the next phase after the next month or so into the development of the preferred land use plan and finalization of it, the preparation of more objective design standards and the refinements to the policy plan and analysis of those changes under the California Environmental Quality Act through an EIR. We're then going to move to the final stage of preparing the overall updates to the TOP and updating the implementation plan, making changes to the websites, and expanding the tracking and feedback system. We anticipate adoption of the TOP update to occur in early 2022. This is the website I was referring to. So if you go to ontarioplan.org/TOP2050, you'll find this link, and it has a lot of information on it. We're going to be expanding the amount of information that is on it over the next few weeks. This is one of the more pivotal pieces of the update, which is the housing strategy of the city, the changes to the land use plan based on the need to accommodate the future growth allocation identified by the state and the regional government SCAG. So you can go on to this map. This is an interactive map where you can zoom in and out. A lot of people are pretty familiar with that, but if you're not, it's just like using maps on your smartphone. You can zoom in and out and you can identify what changes are occurring, and we've identified why they are changing and what is being recommended. Just wanted to step back and put this presentation in context because the city has been having a conversation with the community on a number of topics, some of which we are going to address in this update directly, and others are going to inform our updates. So here's a timeline of the major outreach efforts and community engagement activities that have been going on over the last 4 years. So some of you may be aware of the Ontario Together effort, which is focused in and around the downtown area. And that has been ongoing since 2018, looking at overall visions, looking at what changes need to occur and what improvements can be made. Then in 2019, the Active Transportation Master Plan was started and a lot of outreach was conducted in order to understand what improvements need to be made to enhance safety and mobility throughout the city in a non-automotive fashion. The city also enacted some efforts to understand how the Great Park concept could be developed in connection with the desires and needs of the community. And that also blended over into an overall master plan for parks and recreation facilities that occurred in the same year. The city also conducted housing outreach, both on fair housing matters and in a document called the Consolidated Plan, which addresses how the city is going to meet the needs of those who are disadvantaged, lower income, or otherwise in a special needs group. And both of these documents are already required because of the city's use of community development block grant funds. Those are federal funds used to improve housing conditions. They also overlap substantially with the content that we need to cover in the housing element update, which is being prepared in parallel. So we have already, we're already going to be able to rely on the substantial outreach that was done in the Fair Housing Assessment and Consolidated Plan efforts in order to inform the housing element update. And we're going to supplement that with some additional outreach in the coming months. There is a larger community fair that occurred, and then the downtown district plan was developed in 2020. And now we're preparing the update of the TOP, which really takes all of this input into consideration, formalizes it, and establishes updated policies based on the direction. So you can see the color-coded dots based on the topics that were addressed at each of these. Now I'm going to get into a real high-level discussion of some of the existing conditions and land use considerations that we need to take under advisement when we're drafting new strategies and policies. On housing, this is probably the most substantial update of an existing element or topic in the Ontario plan. There's been dozens of new laws that have been passed over the last 3 to 4 years on housing. Is obviously a critical issue, and the state and legislature and the people are wrestling with how to best address it. And these 4 laws listed are those that are the most important for understanding some of the changes that we might make for the land use plan and how the city's housing strategy can best comply with state law. So in SB 330, that Senate bill essentially said that there is no downzoning allowed compared to what was in the land use and zoning as of January 1st, 2018. The state is attempting to ensure that capacity stays at or above the levels that it was available at 2018. In SB 166, that law essentially said that the city has to maintain enough capacity for the future growth identified by the state and the regional government throughout the planning period for the housing element, which is 2021 to 2029. The Ontario plan overall looks much longer term, but the housing elements are updated every 8 years. And that law says that the city has to maintain capacity throughout the entirety of that 8-year planning period. Assembly Bill 1397 raises the bar for what is considered an underutilized site. Vacant sites are very easy to count towards accommodating that future growth allocation. Underutilized sites, such as an existing underperforming shopping center or an agricultural use, is still considered underutilized, and the state wants greater evidence that that site could be developed during that 8-year planning period. And finally, Assembly Bill 72 puts some abilities in the state's hands to ensure that jurisdictions are complying with state housing law and allows the State Department of Housing and Community Development to get the Office of the Attorney General involved, as well as some substantial fines for noncompliance. So all of these are reasons why the city really needs to wrestle with some of the new requirements in housing element law, make sure that they comply with state law and are moving forward to create more housing opportunities. This is the future growth need I was referring to. There's a lot of numbers on here, a lot of text. This is kind of a hefty subject here. Starting at the top right, you will see that this is the RHNA number, the RHNA, that's Regional Housing Needs Assessment. That is the process by which the state identifies future housing growth, and then eventually the number gets whittled down from the regional number down to each jurisdiction. So in 2014 to 2021, that planning period, the City of Ontario's RHNA was about 11,000, and about 4,300 of that is lower income. So this RHNA number is broken down into really 4 income categories, and low or very low is sometimes referred to together as lower income. It's what people might normally consider affordable housing. The market obviously doesn't serve affordable housing very well, or we wouldn't have the housing crisis we do. And that is the number that is the most difficult for jurisdictions to provide for in terms of capacity and likelihood of development. So it was about 11,000 total RHNA in 2013 to 2021. This cycle, that number has been increased substantially to about 21,000. And this is across the board. Jurisdictions throughout the Southern California region have seen their RHNA numbers increase from as little as 50% to as much as 2,000%. The numbers are attempting to make up for the pent-up demand that has occurred over the last 20 and 30 years. So as I said, lower income housing isn't really well served by the market. So the state has some thresholds for jurisdictions to use as guidelines for what zoning is going to be considered appropriate to accommodate lower income housing. And the primary tool is that bold first bullet, vacant or underutilized land, zone 30 units an acre or more. And you can use about half of the mixed use land that you have identified. And that is the most conventional way that jurisdictions can set the table so that lower income housing can be accommodated. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but this is the best way that the jurisdiction of the City of Ontario can ensure that the city's regulations are able to facilitate it. The city is not in charge of building housing, nor does it have to require property owners to build it, and property owners are not required to build lower income housing. However, the city is responsible for maintaining enough vacant or unutilized land zoned at that 30 units an acre or more in order to accommodate any of the unbuilt lower income RHNA need, that 8,900 number. There are some other ways that the jurisdictions can accommodate their RHNA number that you see listed below. However, the primary tool again is that vacant and unutilized land. So some might be familiar with the amount of development that is still left in the current TOP, which is about 50,000 units. So obviously 50,000 is much larger than the 21,000, but again, that breakdown by income category and that 9,000 lower income units, which is actually about 10,265 once you get a little bit of a buffer that the state advises that each jurisdiction have in order to ensure that it doesn't automatically have to rezone the land. The result is that the city does not have enough high density zoned land. And so that is the primary change that we are developing in the new housing element strategy and land use strategy. So that is a little bit about the housing development and the housing growth pressures that the city is facing. It's also about where you put growth based on changes in infrastructure investments related to mobility. So alternative modes of transportation, including buses, rail, and bikeways, as well as new sidewalks. So what you see here is a map of the city's alternative transportation master plan. This shows the proposed improvements long-term of the bicycle network, multi-purpose paths, and helps you understand how people are going to be able to move around without necessarily using cars, and also for recreation and entertainment. So we wanted to take this into consideration where we're understanding what changes might be worthwhile or appropriate for the land use plan to ensure maximum compatibility and benefit. We also have to consider the goods movement nature of development in and around Ontario. So keep in mind the truck routes. Some of these are at a statewide level and cannot be influenced by the City of Ontario in terms of changing them. Others are regional in nature and are critical to the efficient movement of goods throughout the city and to ensure that trucks do not go into neighborhoods and avoid incompatible uses as much as possible. This is a map that shows where future transit investments are going to occur. And this really influenced heavily where we decided to recommend increases in intensity so that higher density land suitable for affordable or market rate residential development or mixed use development to maximize the benefits of the BRT, the bus rapid transit investments, and the potential transit stations. A big topic for this update is the introduction and reflection of Senate Bill 1000, which is the environmental justice legislation. The city already addresses community health to a large degree, and there's already an active series of groups and organizations addressing health and wellness in Ontario, but SB 1000 formalizes that even further and requires that jurisdictions adopt either an environmental justice element or integrate those issues into other elements of the update. Whenever you're updating two or more elements, and we are definitely updating two or more, and so we are folding it into this update effort. What SB 1000 requires is relatively brief in terms of its legislative length. However, it is very impactful and meaningful. So it directs jurisdictions to reduce health risks in what are called disadvantaged communities. Sometimes you'll hear them referred to as environmental justice communities. The term disadvantaged communities also has overlaps in water legislation, and it means something slightly different under environmental justice procedures. The legislation also directs the city to promote more civil engagement and allowing the public to have a greater role in the decision-making process, and to prioritize improvements and programs that address the needs and those health risks in those disadvantaged communities. In particular, there is a list of 6 specific issues that the city is going to address and must address, and that is reducing pollution exposure, improving air quality, promoting more public facilities, improving access to healthy food, creating safer and more sanitary homes, and promoting physical activity. There's other local issues that we will take into consideration as well. So another legislative update since the last preparation of the Ontario plan is related to climate adaptation and resiliency. SB 379 requires jurisdictions to address the topic of climate adaptation and resiliency, essentially focusing on what happens if weather patterns and disasters, whether natural or human generated, get worse. The easiest way to explain this is, what if instead of 100-year floods, more extreme weather events occur and they act more like 200-year floods? What if the flooding area gets bigger? Or what if we have extreme or prolonged drought conditions like people are experiencing in recent years? We are building upon the other efforts that the city has already undertaken, including the 2018 update to the Hazard Mitigation Plan and the preparation of the Climate Action Plan from previous years. We are also updating that in parallel. The city is participating in an effort called Resilient Inland Empire, or Resilient IE, and phase 1 took a regional approach at looking at the issues addressed related to climate adaptation and resiliency, and phase 2 is being launched so that we can get more detailed and focused direction. Now I'm going to go over the economic considerations, and these probably have some of the largest impacts on what changes were made and why. There continues to be strong demand in Ontario. It is a very attractive place to live and has good schools and other amenities. And the desire for building in Ontario for residential lifestyles is not going to stop anytime soon. There is a parallel desire to build more warehousing throughout Southern California, and the city is keeping that in mind to ensure a balance of where residential development is going and where warehousing will be allowed to expand. And you can see that in the proposed housing strategy and land use plan. What has changed, especially over the last couple of years, is the incredibly weak demand for new office. Because of the pandemic, there have been some substantial shifts to the way that people are working, especially in the office environment. And while we do see potentially some rebound, the pandemic has likely dampened the demand for new housing in such a significant manner that we do not see a huge demand for office over the next 5 to 10 years. And long-term, we wanted to course correct the amount of office projected especially in the southern part of the city. The retail market in Ontario will essentially fall along with the growth of residential development. And we are continuing to see a weak level of demand for retail as online retail continues to increase. So when I say weak demand for retail, I mean in-person brick and mortar retail. However, we are going to incorporate a certain amount of neighborhood serving retail and still anticipate some larger regional serving retail in the future land use plan. The hospitality market is obviously a market that got affected by the pandemic. However, we expect it to recover in the coming years, and we have identified areas where we can concentrate hospitality to take advantage of what the city already has. So let me walk you through a really high level of the land use scenario and the housing strategy. Again, in general, just to recap, the changes were primarily driven by the city's requirement to accommodate the approximate 21,000 units of growth, in particular the 9,000 to 10,000 units of lower income obligation. Also, the economic considerations that I just mentioned need or indicate that the land use plan needs to be course corrected somewhat to become in alignment with the current economic conditions, as well as where the property owner's desires and what stakeholder requests are being fed into the city. So here is a map of the current land use plan. And I'm going to kind of go back and forth between this map and the proposed land use map. You can see changes in general with the hatch marks, with the exception of the kind of area just south of downtown and west of the airport. Those hatch marks are indicative of overlays. But as I go back and forth, you can kind of catch the areas that change. And I have another map that identifies this more clearly, so don't worry, this is not the only map. And this is also a map that you can go look at online and zoom in to more clearly see exactly which parcels are being recommended for change and which are not. But essentially, the majority of changes are occurring in the southern part of the city where the vacant and substantially underutilized land is occurring. Excuse me. And that is where we see a tremendous opportunity to increase intensity to accommodate some lower income housing and ensure that there is a balance of affordable and market rate housing throughout the city. So again, the otherwise the land use map is essentially staying the same. There are some small amounts of changes where we're converting some commercial and office space to mixed use based on the economic trends, and some of property owner requests, as long as they align with the TOP vision. There's areas where we're intensifying residential uses and key sites, both to reflect the continued demand from the market and the housing element obligation. Here is the map that's a little bit easier to see and read. And this is the current TOP land use plan. And you can see here a little bit more of what changes occur. And so up in the northern part, you see a lot of red areas turn purple, and that is basically expanding commercial or office spaces into mixed use to better reflect the demands of the market. And down south, you see some of the lower intensity residential going towards either mixed use or higher intensity residential. And then south of Eucalyptus reflect some transition to business park and industrial, based in large part upon the proximity to the airport and the approved industrial development to the west and to the east, and the desire to keep the industrial warehousing and business park south of Eucalyptus in that area. Okay, and so then we have what these numbers mean So there is all of the, what the land use colors mean. And this is what it translates into in terms of long-term growth. So we have about 180,000 people in Ontario, and these are long-term forecasts. This is not necessarily going to happen, but this is what the city needs to plan for in terms of its infrastructure, including roadways, sewer, water, and understanding other facilities like parks and recreation, what the city has to plan for in order to assure a safe and healthy community. And then understanding the jobs factors and the economic influence and economic development strategies that the city needs to maintain. So under existing conditions, we have 180,000 people, and under the current Ontario plan, we have potential of 351,000. With the increased residential capacity, we are increasing the potential units and population, and the jobs is still increasing by over double of what is there today. So aside from longer high-level planning principles and strategies, what a land use change might mean if you're a property owner or you're next to an existing property. If there is a property that is zoned or designated for commercial and it's going to mixed use, those existing commercial uses may remain and they're not going to be required to change, but that designation will now allow the property owner to expand the allowable uses. So any sort of retail office development can be maintained there, and the property owner can choose, if they desire, to change to something that would allow something like residential and retail combined. For some properties that have churches on them, there is a concern that the churches are either going to become non-compliant or are going to be forced off. And that is not true. The existing church facilities can remain in allowed use, and they're not going to be required to sell or change in any way. For the mixed use properties, some may wonder, well, do you have to build what the city has assumed? And the answer is no. We might assume 50% residential and 50% retail, and we are doing so in order to understand some of the potential implications from a transportation perspective, from a parks perspective, all sorts of environmental and planning perspectives. However, that is just our forecast, and the property owner can develop whatever they like as long as they're in compliance with the zoning and the Ontario plan and obtain any environmental clearance that may be required. So that concludes the high-level overview. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask. We ask that you raise your hand and we will call upon you. And again, if you have any questions after this presentation, you can email the city. And if you wish to speak to someone in Spanish, you can contact Robert at the contact information below. And just as a reminder, we are going to be translating this presentation, the slides and the narrative into Spanish and posting that up on the city's website. And then in future outreach efforts, we will conduct parallel English and Spanish presentations. So again, please raise your hand if you have any questions. If not, we have other content that we can go over to help you navigate the website. I'm seeing some in the chat, and since there is no one raising their hand, I'll go ahead and repeat the question, and we can have city staff take a stab at answering this. So the question was from Georgina Reddick. Any plans on including a skate park in the near future? She knows that that is in the plans, but how long does it usually take? So that I would defer to Kim or other city staff to potentially answer that.
Hello, this is Kim. Thank you for your question. The city right now is going through a Parks Master Plan exercise, and I believe it's going in front of the City Council in this next couple weeks. So as part of the city's Parks Master Plan, there is a component of skate parks. So you might want to look there first and see what plans there are in the future. The second part is you can always, the Parks Commission, you're always welcome, and they're meeting right now as we speak. You're always welcome to speak at the Parks Commission as well about skate parks and plans for those as well. So you have a lot of, I'm reading the chat, I apologize. I will get you that exact date, and then I'll put it in the chat if that's okay. Okay, thank you.
And we'll give people another minute or so if you want to raise your hand. I think what we had talked about, if we had time, was to go ahead and give you a little bit of a tour of the website so that you can more quickly visit it and obtain information. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to the website. Just confirming, Kim, can you see this on the website on the screen? Let's see, you might have muted yourself.
We can see it, Colin.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So this is what you will get when you type in ontarioplan.org, and you'll see a large logo here for the update. There's also a menu item here for the update. And you can click on that and it will take you to a subpage of the Ontario Plan that provides information on the update effort, including meeting notifications and other documents or web maps or content that will help you understand what we're doing, help you to comment and submit ideas to city staff so that we can fold them into the plan and understand what the overall schedule will be. So here is the top graphic there, because I'm not sure if it's going to show you my mouse, but the top graphic under the web-based maps is the land use map that I identified during the presentation. If you click on this, you will open up a new window that shows you a web-based version of this draft land use map, which is really the city's housing strategy by and large. So when you go here, this little information window will be up by default. You can understand what this map's purpose is, how to use the map, whether or not, for example, you can look up your property by your address or what's called an assessor's parcel number, the APN. And you can zoom in and understand what land use changes are being recommended and why. And this information widget will give you a little bit more background about what it is we're showing on the map and why. Then you can go to this kind of stack of 3 pieces of paper. Some people refer to them as a stack of paper, or they're kind of similar to a hamburger menu that people have referred to. It is essentially a list of layers. And this is content that we display on the map. And it will help you to be able to turn some of this content on or off if you wish. But essentially, what you're seeing on this map can be best understood by opening up the legend. And that will tell you what colors you're seeing on the map and exactly what they are without you having to click on the map. So you can also go up in the upper right and you can change the base map. Close the legend here. So right now it's on a very neutral background that allows you to see all of the colors in a very easy fashion while understanding the roadway networks and other key features underneath. But if you wish, you can change this to an aerial. And at this scale, obviously it helps you understand the context of the city overall. But when you zoom in, and I will wait a second to see if, make sure that it fully renders on everybody's screen. You can see that we've kind of changed the land use colors so that they're slightly transparent and you can see what's going on underneath. So you can see, obviously, that there's the residential areas just west of downtown, and you can see that they are in fact primarily single-family homes or multifamily homes. You can also see in the downtown area where the mixed use areas are by that purple. And you can go down here and see the proposed land use. That is mixed use, that's the purple. But you can also see what is going on the ground today to help you understand. And there is a difference between sometimes what is there today and what is planned in the future. In most part, the city's land use map reflects largely what is on the ground today when there is a developed area. When it is vacant, largely, or agricultural uses, as is down in the southern part of the city, south of Riverside Drive, as I'm navigating to now, you will see that agricultural pattern of operations, and the land use obviously reflects the long-term future and intended development pattern. So I mentioned that you could click on an area and get information, and that can be done really at any level of zoom. So you can click on an area and it will tell you, a little window will pop up and it goes through all of the layers of information. So you see that it says 1 of 4. That means this is 1 of 4 layers of information that you can learn about. And you can see that what this is being proposed for, mixed use in the Great Park area, what the current Ontario plan designation is there, GC, general commercial. If you go into the legend, you'll be able to see what those abbreviations stand for. What the existing land use is, what growth area this area is addressed by. And there's a handful of growth areas where the city is focusing change. And what part of the city this is in. As a general, we break down the city into some sub areas. How big this parcel is, or this area is, if that's appropriate, and if there is a specific plan or not in the area. Then there's this little triangle, sometimes called a caret, that you'll see here, and that tells you that you can toggle to the next feature or the next layer. And that will outline what area you are clicking on. So this is an area of change overall. What we were talking about before, this was a parcel. This area is more of a broad area where you can see the purple. I'm gonna come back, but I'm gonna click a little bit lower so you can see, because this little information menu kind of pops up to the right of where you click. But you can see now, as this is a different parcel. This is a 16-acre parcel that's treated in a similar fashion. And if I click onto the next, you'll see that same area, because both of these parcels occur in this area of change. And it tells you what changed. So converting general commercial to mixed use, and transitions between this Great Park area and the area up Grove up north. And it also gives you information about why the area is being proposed for change. So this is an area where we're trying to expand the city's capacity for that higher density housing, which will qualify as suitable for lower income housing based on the state default density thresholds. Essentially, the more units you can put on a parcel, the easier it is to develop affordable housing. It's still very expensive, but obviously 30 units an acre allows you to develop housing at a lower cost per unit than 10 units an acre. So that's essentially at the heart of what we're trying to do, is intensify development in and around the city in suitable sites so that it can accommodate its arena. If you click on another layer, this will tell you about changes that might have been made, not because of the land use colors, but because this is a mixed use area, what mix of uses we are assuming. And so it will tell you what the current mix of residential in this case is was proposed at, and that's 30%. And we're proposing to go to 70% of this area being developed for residential. And then it'll tell you why this adjustment is being proposed. You can see the office percentage is being proposed to go from 60% down to 10% because of that drop in the office demand market that we're seeing. So then lastly, this is the proposed growth area. So you can see this light blue boundary. This is a large growth area. I'll have to kind of zoom out for you to appreciate the scale of it. This essentially covers the area kind of centered a little bit in terms of the major growth on Edison/Ontario Ranch Road, but we also come up over to here in order to understand the better context. So you might find yourself saying, I'm not sure what streets those are. So you can come over here and change the background to the streets. And you will be given a base map that allows you to understand, that's right, this is Schaefer Avenue, and this is Edison, and this is Eucalyptus. So now I can understand the boundaries of the growth area. You can also, there's two aerials. There's one with labels, which really kind of label some of the key features once you get down to a certain level. The streets and the imagery are the two that I find to be the most helpful. If you're really just trying to see patterns, that light gray can be the cleanest to understand what's going on where. But I like to see what's going on underneath, so I usually work with the aerial. So you can go in and let me go to an area where it's a little bit has smaller parcels, a little bit easier to see. Let's go to the northeastern part of the city, where they have the Ontario Airport Metro Center area. You obviously have the arena and the mall area over here. And you can see here that this is an area of change around the Ontario Mills Mall, where we're assuming a greater amount of residential opportunity occurring. The mall is performing well. We're not proposing that the mall gets demolished and gets replaced completely by residential, but more offering up opportunities to expand in some of the underperforming areas of the out parcels and allowing that to develop as residential. But as you zoom in, you will begin to be able to see the parcel patterns. Sometimes it's helpful here this is where it's really helpful to turn on that light gray canvas so you can see the parcel patterns here. And you can see now that the number of layers that is being viewed is decreased, because as you get zoomed in, some of the layers get turned off just for greater visibility. But it will still give you a good amount of information on the parcel and the area in general. So that is a bit of a tour through the land use map. And I wanted to see if anybody has any questions on how to use this. If not, there's a couple other features on the website that I can walk you through so you can more easily digest it. Not seeing any hands right now. I'll be able to come back to this. So if you do have questions on it, don't be shy. We also have a series of kind of web pages that you can open up to better understand each of the topics that we are updating. So housing is the most prominent. And so when you click on, I'm going to go back, just when you click on this link here, where you can see we have placeholders for some of the infrastructure topics, environmental justice and mobility. And we're going to be having a series of these web pages where you can click on the image, bring you to this web page, and you will be able to understand some of the information in more depth. So here you have kind of the navigation menu here, but it's essentially one long scrolling page, but you can use these as a table of contents at any time to navigate to the different topics. So in this case, we have a little bit about what the housing element is and some links to other parts of the website, and then what that RHNA acronym is all about and how it's determined. We have some supplementary graphics that you can look at to have a better understanding. And then you can see what the city's RHNA number is in more detail and what it means. We have a little bit more information there. And then what it's going to take to accommodate that RHNA and meet the state obligations, particularly on the lower income sites, maintaining those housing opportunities throughout the planning period, and some of those key planning laws that I mentioned earlier. So this, you can see that you can navigate back and forth. You can use your mouse wheel to scroll. You can just navigate using these hot links here. And you'll see at the top here that it says Housing 101. So this is our introductory piece, and then we're planning on following this up with either Housing 102 or Housing 201. We haven't decided on the number yet. And that will be a little bit more detail about how the city is addressing its housing obligations. And then a third, we'll talk about policy changes and direction. And we're going to follow that pattern for all of these various topics. And so we'll be coming out with these over the next week or so that you can review the information and be more prepared for our second workshop, which will occur at the end of July. So we have more information on the website about the overall schedule, just in kind of a very simplified graphic format. We have areas where we can post past meeting materials, and that's where we're going to post this meeting, including the recording that people can listen to both in English and in Spanish. We're going to be posting some FAQs. We have a general set, and we wanted to do a little bit of outreach to get an understanding of what people are asking about. And then contact information. Kim is your one-stop shop. She will get you to the right person if for some reason she is not that right person. And so otherwise, I'll stop talking for the moment and see if either anybody has any questions, either in the chat or if the city wants to say anything. I'm not seeing anything, and so far. So otherwise, Kim or Rudy, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything or if you wanted to indicate whether or not we wanted to pursue some of the land use changes in more detail. I can use the web map to go over some of the areas of change and explain them, or we can do something else.
Well, I think I'd like to introduce Rudy Zeladon, our planning director, has just come online, and have him just give a brief overview of where we are. And he has a little more information about approaching the question of skate parks. So Rudy, would you please give us your insights into the city and growth?
Yeah, can you hear me? Am I unmuted there?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Rudy Zeladon. I'm the planning director. I want to welcome everyone for joining us today. Yeah, we're pretty excited about the TOP 2050 update. As you saw from the presentation, we've been working pretty hard to meet the state mandate dates for housing, but also, making sure that we're doing the appropriate land use changes as needed. In terms of the question regarding the skate park, I just came from the Parks and Rec Commission, where we presented presentation on the Great Park that we're working on. If those of you not familiar with the Great Park, it's about a 400-acre park in the South Ontario Ranch there, which goes from Haven Avenue to Campus Avenue. So it goes east to west or west to east, depending on where you're at. But we're working on phase one, which is the area between Archibald and Haven Avenue. And so, with the Great Park, there'll be plenty of opportunities for a variety of active and passive areas. And I know that the Community Life and Culture with their Parks Master Plan are working on a future skate park. And so if it, as the Great Park phase one starts completion next year, that may be an area where we look for a skate park or other amenity, but it is on the city's list, as well as other aquatic uses and as other uses such as additional library or cultural kind of institutions. So, but yeah, if anyone has any questions, we're here to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks, Rudy.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? I think one question I'll raise is, could you go into a little bit more, Colin, the truck routes and how or the city in general has truck routes to make sure that trucks aren't cutting through neighborhoods or, areas where they're trying to save time. And for one thing we want to make sure of is that people understand that we're looking for everyone for input. So if there are a lot of trucks on your neighborhood street, please reach out to the city because we do have designated truck routes. And that's what we're looking at right now as part of the traffic modeling to ensure that the truck routes are amenable to trucks, to make sure they can move swiftly through the city, but also to make sure that they don't cut through our neighborhoods. But we need your help if you do have instances where trucks are cutting through your local neighborhood, to please contact us so we can make sure that they understand what the truck routes are. So I know that was an item raised at another community event.
Let me just go ahead and speak to this slide. I think I'm glad you mentioned that, Kim, to make sure that people are following the truck routes, and you can make sure that they are not running afoul into places where they shouldn't be going. One of the graphics that might not be as easily understood is this graphic, which is a bunch of dots and lines on it, which is really an identification of where the regional investments in terms of mobility and transit and local investments are going from a mass transit perspective. And so again, those on the left, those dark blue dots with the kind of blue circles around them, those are future transit stations or transit priority areas where you're going to have either bus stops that have a high frequency of use, or potentially in some areas around the region, maybe even a train stop. And in those areas it's where generally it's more appropriate to put higher density development and mixed use development. So you can have a mix of people taking transit, either traveling from their home location to another destination that is along or accessible by transit, or a place where you can put places to work so that people can travel to that location and via transit. And it's all designed to try and reduce the reliance on the automobile and reduce congestion on the roadways. On the right side, you see dark blue lines down key roads like Holt and Euclid and Edison / Ontario Ranch Road. Those are three primary routes where you see future investments in what's called bus rapid transit. And those are buses that have long service routes. So they travel long distances and they don't stop as frequently. So you get to where you need to go faster. They usually stop between a half mile or a mile between bus stops. And you can get farther in a quicker fashion. And so these are areas where it makes sense to put higher density residential, especially so that people can get access to those transit routes and take advantage of mass transit in a more efficient fashion. So this is a large influencer again on where we decided to put some of the housing opportunities, particularly for people who might be auto dependent or and are looking for a change, or people who cannot afford a car and would prefer to be able to access lower cost transit options. Would you like me to go through the land use changes? We have a fair amount of time left, and unless everybody who is in attendance right now would, you can feel free to kind of put in the chat if you're just looking to, if you'd like to hear more, or if you would like to go back to your life. So we'll, I'll take direction from the city or from the attendees.
All right, thank you, Colin. I think we'll keep on for probably another 10 minutes and see if other questions arise. It's important that we make sure that we hear from you, of course, and we will be having a second workshop on June 29th. So that will also be an opportunity to speak out in this type of forum. But of course, again, if you have any questions or comments, please reach out to myself with any comments or questions. That would be fantastic as well.
Yeah, and this workshop here is really designed first and foremost as a recording of some basic information about the project, with an ability for members of the public to attend if they like. But we really wanted to get something out there that could be shared, that people could view on their own schedule, on their own time, get a lot of information out of it, and then come to that second workshop, which will be pretty broadly noticed and advertised so we can maximize public participation at that time. So let's see, I'm not seeing either everyone's pretty content or something
Yeah,
else.
Colin, this is Rudy.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if there's no questions, I think at this point, I don't want to keep anybody on more than they have to be. And we can regroup, and again, we'll have the second meeting, and hopefully, we'll get more participants and maybe get the word out a little bit. Again, the website will be available for comments. And staff will also be available if there's any future or any questions that you have of staff. And I think you have the contact. I just saw it there somewhere.
Mhm.
There you go. Yeah. So
All right.
Okay.
Kim, did you
All
want to?
No, I think, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you taking the time out of your evening. Be sure, please, any questions? Oh, Rosario, hello. Thank you for asking a question. The traffic increase. So there is a traffic increase overall, but you're finding that as part of this process and growth, we're required by CEQA to do a traffic analysis. And Robert, would you be able to translate in the chat and ask her just a little bit more of traffic, what type of traffic, please?
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Well, while he's doing that, I think I can add that to what Kim was saying, that we will be doing an analysis of what the potential housing strategy and land use changes will mean for traffic on all of the roads in the city. There is some adjustments that we are making, as I've said, where we're reducing some of the non-residential uses, kind of reduced retail and reduced office demand. And they actually, those non-residential uses generate more traffic than an equivalent amount of residential use. So we are increasing residential density, especially down in the south. But those are the areas where we're having probably the greatest ability to plan the roads to be large enough. And in general, we've done some preliminary analysis and are finding that the roads are pretty well sized down there. But the city is very focused on trying to make sure that for the vast majority of the city, that we do not increase traffic past very good levels of service. There are some areas where you want to have a more walkable environment, and you may accept a lower level of service to ensure that the car does not end up dominating the area like the downtown area. But overall, we're going to be doing analysis and ensuring that from an environmental perspective, what you will see in the EIR is traffic analyzed based on what's called vehicle miles traveled, or how far cars travel on a daily basis. And that is the newest threshold that the city has to use. And the city is not allowed to use level of service from an environmental perspective to require improvements. However, the city can maintain a policy to maintain level of service and require improvements to ensure that both residential and goods movement, vehicle movements are efficient and safe through the city. All right, so as in the residential and industrial areas, including the school areas. So that we're definitely concerned about some of what you might consider more sensitive populations, school kids. We want to make sure that we don't increase truck traffic around schools. and we don't make large roadways unsafe around some of the residential areas. So that is all goes into it. So we're paying attention to what traffic increases are going where and whether or not that's safe or acceptable. So what we first have to do is come up with a land use plan that addresses state law, and then identify through kind of a series of traffic analyses what the land use changes could mean from traffic. And then we will adjust the land use plan if needed, or adjust the roadway plan if needed, to ensure that there's not an unacceptable amount of congestion or unsafe conditions. So Kim, I don't know if you, or Rudy, I don't know if you want to add anything in there about the traffic concerns that are being expressed here.
No, thanks, Colin. I think you answered it in terms of the TOP, but just in terms of existing, yeah, we are experiencing some heavy truck impacts on certain streets, and it's a variety of reasons. I know that our police department currently is out now with our code enforcement out ticketing in areas where trucks are not allowed, and some of our local streets, whether that's Sultana, Bondview, even Grove. And we're also working with the neighboring jurisdictions, Chino, as well as Eastville, and them to work with them on the truck routes, because again, they are also building a lot of industrial down south, and that traffic is coming up Euclid, it's coming up Archibald, it's coming up Haven. And so, we need to work together so that we can make sure that, the trucks have areas to travel through, but not impact the surrounding residents, the existing residents, as well as new development that we're doing. So it's a constant battle that we're doing currently. But I think as we grow as a city, we need to really look at that and how we're going to balance that, because even though we want to create jobs, we want to bring the industry here to create jobs, we also have to look at those impacts. And like I always tell people, we want to continue to add value. So we want to make sure that, the quality of life is important. And that's what the neat thing about the TOP update is once we get that land use plan down, then we start analyzing and start looking at, what those impacts are, start to looking at where those streets are, where we need to widen and so forth. And a lot of new development there that we are doing in Ontario Ranch has been paying for a lot of the improvements along Archibald Avenue, the on-ramp that we just completed this month, where it added a couple additional lanes and also increased the on-ramps, the off and on-ramps east and west. That was part of a lot of the development impact fees to anticipate the growth. So those will continue. We'll continue to do those improvements as we move forward. But again, I think our job right now is to nail down that land use plan so that we can really analyze what those impacts are, and then we can kind of either back up and rethink some areas so that, because at the end of the day, our job is to provide for the for a good quality of life for the citizens of Ontario, and that's our main objective. And with that, we understand that there's going to be some balances and there's going to be some give and takes, but at the end of the day, that is foremost in our priority, is to ensure the quality of life for the residents of Ontario. So I don't know if you want to say anything, Kim. But.
No, I think spot on. And in the interim, we've had some road closures for construction that have probably increased the localized traffic while they're doing those improvements on our regional infrastructure. But other than that,
yeah, great point. Yeah, we have, and actually our engineering department has on our social media has been posting those closures because there is a lot. The 60 freeway is going through a lot of upgrades, and so what's happening there is that that the 60 freeway, where the portion goes through Ontario, has been closed at certain nights, which pushes some of the traffic onto Riverside. It pushes it onto Mission. And so they're doing these detours. So a lot of these trucks are cutting through neighborhoods where they're not supposed to. So we've been working also with Caltrans for proper signage to ensure that those detours are done correctly and not impacting our neighborhoods. So that's a good point, Kim.
So do we have any other questions at this time? We're welcome to stay and talk and chat. But if not, we'll probably end this workshop then, if no one else has anything to add.
And again, we'll be available,
Mhm.
email, website, call us directly, and we can continue to communicate.
Yes. So with that, thank you so much for your time and sharing your thoughts. We appreciate it. We will be having another workshop. Please go to our website at ontarioplan.org, TOP 2050. We're going to be posting more informational items on there for EJ, as well as existing conditions, environmental justice and existing conditions. And feel free to contact us with any questions you might have or comments. And look for our next workshop coming up on July 29th. And once again, thank you for your time tonight and have a great evening. All right, take care, everyone. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Hailey. Thanks, Ruth.